Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show, where this week we are really super excited to have head coach Brian Cole on the show. We're going to talk to Coach Cole and complete our conversations about building a program and program building, and really honored to have him on the show. He has some tremendous, unique experience that I know Tyler and myself are really excited about diving into today. It's been a bit of an eventful day. My oldest daughter is procrastinated a little bit, and we spent the day in frantic mode working on her grease project, and I had to kick her in the butt a little bit, get her going on that. But thankfully, I know everybody's super concerned. The project on Hemera, the goddess of the sun, is complete. So we are ready to, to roll that way.
Well done.
Before I get into asking Coach Cole and talking to Coach Cole and getting into the subject at hand, I know we have a lot of Prescott people that watch the show, and I just wanted to take a moment. Obviously, really successful Prescott winter sports season. Been super excited to see our basketball team. We currently have a basketball team, boys basketball team ranked number one in 4A, and our girls soccer team also ranked number one in 4A. Prescott always has really successful teams, but in looking up there, we have not won a team state championship since 2002. It's a baseball team with future not Hall of Famer, but future major leaguer Jason Purdy was on that team. So I'd encourage everybody in Prescott to get out there and watch those teams, because very difficult to upend some of those top schools in the Valley and Tucson when you get deep into the state playoffs, as we have found out. But I would encourage everybody to get out there and watch those teams, because they are doing a heck of a job, and really enjoy that. Last, we had a rivalry game against Bradshaw, which is always a lot of fun. It was a packed house over at the Dome, the Prescott Gymnasium there. But I would like to see everybody get out there and support all these teams. And I know it is very cold in the winter for soccer games, but I think we got some really good teams there. Girls basketball's tearing it up, so get out there and watch those teams. Interesting side bit: 57 million people watched the AFC Championship last week between the Chiefs and the Bills, which is obviously a pretty high rating. And super excited about watching the Super Bowl. As likable as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are, I don't think Travis Kelce's quite as likable. But am I the only one that thinks they seem to get a few of the close calls, or is that just me? Am I belly aching about that? I'm not a huge fan either way of pro football. You guys, I think, both know I'm a Sun Devil homer, but it does seem like they've gotten their fair share of calls there. So if either have any thoughts on the Super Bowl, I'm going to turn it over to our guest, Coach Cole, first, and then Coach Brusso, you can give us some thoughts on the big game coming up here next Sunday.
You know, either team, to be honest. Always like to watch the Super Bowl, no matter who's in it. But I'm a Packer fan, so unfortunately they haven't made it in a while. But I'm not sure who I'm going to root for as far as the Chiefs go. You know, I know a lot of people think that they're getting the benefit of the doubt on a lot of calls, but honestly, we've coached long enough to know that sometimes you get those calls, sometimes you don't. So, it does at times look a little one way, but I don't think that's the case. I hope not. I hope that's not the case. But I just hope it's a good game and entertaining, and that the Eagles show up and play tough. And I do like Andy Reid. I think he's a class act guy, and a heck of a coach. So, but I'm not really rooting for one or the other. I just want it to be a good game.
Brusso, some thoughts on the big game?
Well, Adam Schefter put out some interesting statistics on some certain plays that resulted in penalties and some just data there. So you guys can I recommend people look at that because it's quite telling. But I'm with the whole of America in rooting for the Eagles against the Chiefs and Jackson Mahomes. So go Eagles, fly Eagles, fly.
Well, then I guess we should get into the subject at hand. In doing my homework here, I already knew a lot about Coach Cole. Been really super impressed from afar, watching all the great success he's had as and building all sorts of different programs. But as I was doing my homework here, his last 21 seasons as a head coach in Arizona has an astounding 19 state playoff appearances, three state championships in three different classifications, two state runner-up he's coached, and this is the one that just absolutely blew me away. He's coached in the 1A playoffs, the 2A playoffs, the 5A playoffs, the 6A playoffs, and the Open State playoffs, which we talked about when we had Coach McDonald from Basha on. The Open State playoffs is the top 8, regardless of classification in Arizona. If Coach ever decides to take a job in 3A or 4A, he will complete the, I don't know, it's not a trifecta, complete the number of conferences we have here in Arizona. Won close to 200 games in Arizona football. Tremendous football coach, and really, really excited to have him on the program. Most recently was the head coach at Sandra Day O'Connor. He's been at North Canyon, Joy Christian, Phoenix Christian. And Coach, we're really, really excited to have you on the show. And we're going to start out with the same question we've talked to kind of everybody about in building a program and in establishing your culture and things of that nature. And obviously, I have a really varied experience in coaching at so many different levels and different types of schools and things. After you get the job, what were the first things you had to get in place, the first things you had to do to kind of lay the groundwork for having such a successful program?
Get to know the players, get to know the kids. So that's number one is have that meeting, meet the players. And, it's always been in the off season when I took a job. So off season stuff, you gotta get on that. So number one for me is building the relationships. And I just think that's huge. And then letting the players know right away what, is expected of them. And, what we're looking for in the off season, what we want to accomplish and all that. So they know, you gotta kind of tell them what your standard is, what you're looking for. And, and hopefully you get buy-in right away. But number one is building relationships. I just think that's huge. And while you're doing that, find your team leaders and kind of find your guys that, they're going to be the guys that keep the other teammates in check. I think having team leaders is huge because it can't all come from the coaches. Coming from the players, it's better actually. The best teams I've had in the past have been player-led teams. And so you got to find those guys. And the best place in the off season for me to find those guys and to build relationships is the weight room. And I've always been a big weight room guy. And to me, there was nothing more important in the off season than the weight room. And so I think the thing for me that's been most crucial to building the program to start is getting the guys in there and getting them on the routine that you want them to be on, and weight room has come a long ways over the years. And I think majority of the people probably have pretty decent programs now. But when I started coaching as an assistant back in 1992, the program I coached for, they didn't have anything going on in the weight room at all. And they were horrible. And it showed. So again, weight room to me, and we got something going there and we turned that program around. But I just think the weight room so much plays the biggest part in building a successful program. Again, because you find out who your leaders are. Obviously, with everybody else that's in there, you're building your strength, you're building your explosiveness, you're building your speed. You're doing all those things that's real important on the field. But the other part of the weight room for me is the relationship building that me and my coaches get to do with those kids. 4 days a week in there, or how many days you're doing it. And I think for me, that's always where I've got to know the kids more than just, who you are as a football player. But, I get to talk to them in there. I get to find out who they are and what their background is and family life and all that stuff. So I think the weight room for me has been the number one factor in building a program and building it fast.
Coach Brusso, some thoughts on that?
Did obviously you coaching with different levels all the way from 1A to 6. Did your approach right off the bat change depending on that level? And then kind of a follow-up to that is generally, not always true, but just at large, the higher classification you go, the more resources and maybe better facilities are available. So did that adjust your approach to at some of the smaller schools because of maybe some different limitations you had?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, when I started out as an assistant at Cortez High School, they didn't honestly, they didn't have a very good weight room at all. And they were lacking so much in their weight room that it wasn't even kind of a doable thing. And so what me and another assistant coach did, there was a gym up the street that was really a good gym at the time, and we bought the kids memberships. I went and talked to the guy that owned the gym, and he gave us a deal, and I got the kids, a bunch of kids memberships, and so we trained there. We started out there. So, and then as time went on, I was at Cortez for 8 years as an assistant. They upgraded the weight room and it got better. So we started lifting there. So I've always been, hey, make it work, wherever you are, whether you have great equipment or not so much, find a way to make it work. And, I go back to when I was in high school, our weight room had like 2 universal sets and maybe a bench with a bar and a squat rack with a bar. And that was about it. And so me and my buddies trained in my dad's garage. That's where we did all our training. So you make it work with whatever you have. But to answer your question, I was lucky when I went from a 5A program at North Canyon to a 1A program at Joy Christian. They had just gotten some new weight equipment, and it wasn't like 20 racks going down the wall, but it was enough for the amount of guys we had to get in there and get stuff done. And it was brand new stuff. It was good stuff. And so I didn't change the workouts. We did it all. If we were going 4 days a week at North Canyon, I went 4 days a week at Joy Christian. And I wanted to treat that 1A program like a big program because that's what I was used to. And when I was assistant coach, I was at a 4A program, a 5A program, and a junior college, 2 5A programs, and a junior college before I became a head coach. So I was at bigger programs. So when I went to Joy, man, that was 8, man. I had never done that before. But the one thing I did is we got in the weight room just like we did at the 5A program. And we lifted 4 days a week, and those kids bought in. And because they did buy in, we had instant success at that program. And my first year there, we made it to the championship. We lost, but we made it. Second year, it's still in 1A. We won the championship. And I really believe part of that was because I treated it like a big program. And not just the weight room, but we did spring ball. And I found out that a lot of 1A schools weren't doing spring ball. And because they felt like it took away from other sports, but we did it. And we entered sevens tournaments, and the tournaments we entered were against big schools. I didn't go play 5-on-5 like some of the 1A schools were doing, tournaments. We entered the big sevens tournaments. And because I wanted our guys I wanted them to feel like it was a big program because, again, it's football. And to me, man, football is football. And so weight room didn't change. Sevens didn't change. Again, I tried to treat it like a big program. And I didn't know what 1A football was all about. I didn't know the 8-man game. And so, man, we trained them like we're getting ready to compete in 5A. And our very first game, and again, I didn't know what 1A was all about, but our very first game was a home game. We ended up winning 96-0. And we're not trying to win like that, but it's just, we had our guys, and nothing against 1A, because there are some great coaches in 1A and there's some good football in 1A, but there was also some programs that weren't that good. But I didn't know, and I expected it to be like, man, you show up on a Friday night, like 5A, you got to prepare and you got to play. And so anyway, but I definitely treated the players and the program like a big program and did not change the weight room. Again, equipment-wise and things like that, yeah, there may have been some limitations. I was lucky at North Canyon. While I was there, we got a brand new weight room, and it was awesome. Joy had brand new stuff when I got there. Phoenix Christian, after I was there for a year, got brand new weight equipment. And then when I was at O'Connor, believe it or not, they got a brand new weight room. So I've been lucky in the place that I was at. And I don't know if it's because I stress the importance of the weight room, that those things happen. But I think everybody now, for the most part, stresses the importance of the weight room because it's just a huge factor.
So let me ask you, Coach, in that regard, I'm sure at the 6A schools, I know most of the 6A schools in Arizona have that kind of built into the school day that you can get your lifting done. How did you do that at the other schools? Because and the other thing that I found really interesting in looking at all your success is I believe Coach is a firefighter and spent many years doing that and wasn't necessarily on campus. Did you feel like it was incredibly important to get somebody on staff that was on your staff, and how did that go about, and how did that change from program to program in establishing that culture, and was it part of the school day and all those type of issues?
Yeah. We had established a weight class for varsity football players. And so when I got there and took that over, we kept that class going. And it was, I don't remember if when I took it over, it was a 7th-hour class, but last class of the day. But I got it to be the last class of the day. That's when I wanted it. And even though I was off campus, what they did for me there was they put a teacher on campus as the teacher of that class, the official teacher, but I was there every day. And, that's the other part of the weight room that I feel is really important, at least it is for me, that the head coach needs to be in there and be involved. And, it's just like anything else with practice, or you do something as a team, and if the head coach isn't there, then a lot of times the players don't think it's important. So I haven't missed a day in the weight room since I started coaching. And so it was the same way at the other schools. And at Joy Christian, when I went there, we had a first hour, but it was weights first hour. And the reason I wanted to do it first hour there was because I had kids coming from all over the place. Like, they weren't just neighborhood kids. It was a, Christian school. They were coming from all over the valley to come there. And I wanted it first hour because I wanted to make sure kids showed up to school. And I would know right away if I had a player missing, and find out why he's missing and maybe even go get him. So that was important. But we were lucky to have that at Joy. And then at Phoenix Christian, we also had a weight class. So everywhere I've been as a head coach, we did have it during the day. And the other part of your question, with me being on the fire department, what I would do is, if I was working that day, and my schedule was 24 hours on and 48 hours off. So there'd be one day, maybe 2 days where I'd be working during the week and I would just take time off, either use vacation time, or I'd have another captain come in for me and cover my 3 hours that I'd be gone. He'd be there. And so my crew got really good at understanding that there probably wasn't a shift during the football season that I was going to miss some time. And the really cool thing was, by the end of my career, because I retired 2 years ago, but by the end of my career, my whole crew was guys that I coached at one time. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool. So they totally got it. And they'd be like, yeah, hey, coach, we'll see you, and they knew that if I told them I was going to be gone for 2 hours, I was probably going to be gone for 4 hours. So they were pretty good about it, and they took care of me. But yeah, I've been really lucky to have those classes. I think that's the other thing that's really important. There's programs out there that still don't have a football class during the school day, or any kind of athletic class where you got your teams in there. I'll give O'Connor credit about something. They have a sports class for every varsity sport. Like basketball has their own hour class. Football, we had 3 by the time I left there. We had freshman, JV, and varsity. All had a weights class, football class. Everybody, tennis, you name it. If you're a sport, you have that class. And so I think that, East Valley had been doing it for years, and that's why they kind of got the jump on everybody. But if you're not doing that now, if your school or school district isn't doing that, then especially for football, I don't know how serious you are about football, if they're not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. When I got to Prescott, they hadn't had that. And I was fortunate. I was at a good job at Red Mountain, and they said, well, we would like to offer you the job. And I said, well, I mean, we need to get that, or I'm going to stay put where I'm at, because that is, I think, almost at this point, a necessity in establishing your culture and your program and things of that nature. Coach Brusso?
Yeah, you mentioned, right off the bat of the show that initially building those relationships was the most important part for you and getting things going. So now later on, what did it mean for you? And I think this speaks for itself. But what did it mean for you to have your whole crew as players or kids that you had coached at some point? Because I think that just says so much about the relationships you built and invested in. But what did that mean to you?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it means a lot, and for different reasons, and but mainly because they wanted to do what I did. They wanted to get on the fire department. They wanted to, I'd have guys, every year I coached. I'd wait till they were seniors for the most part, but they could, if they wanted to come do a ride along, they came down to the station, hung out, ride, go on calls, and I think we figured it out. That there's probably right around 40 guys that got on the fire department that I've coached, and getting on that job isn't super easy, especially Phoenix. So to have that many guys, and I mean, shoot, some of them are captains and chiefs now and whatever, and because it's been that long, that I've been doing it, and so yeah, the feeling to have them on my crew. Number one, it's we just knew each other so well already, and it makes things easy in the firehouse because you're there for 24 hours. You're stuck with each other, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, they all, none of them called me Captain Cole. They all called me Coach, and and so it was cool, really neat. And like I said, they took care of me too. They're for the most part, a bunch of younger guys, and they took care of the old man. So that was nice. But no, I think it's really cool. And just like with guys that are teachers, that are coaches, a lot of your players become teachers and become coaches. And I had probably, and I still have, usually 3 or 4, maybe 5, 6 other firefighters on my staff too, on my coaching staff. So it wasn't just me, man. The kids were around the fire department guys a lot, and so a lot of them wanted to do the job, and they came down, like I said, and rode, and they liked it. And sure enough, I mean, I had a kid at one time that was playing football at ASU, and while he was playing at ASU, he was backing up Terrell Suggs. So he was a defensive end. He was backing up Suggs, and Suggs graduated. So the next year, he would have become the starter. Well, between the time football ended and they were getting ready to go to Camp Tarzona, he got his notice for the fire department that they wanted to hire him because he had tested and he had done. And I tried to talk him in, just keep playing football and finish that up and stuff, and the fire department would be there for him. But he was so excited about, he had the opportunity to get on the job. He took the job, and now he's been on over 20 years. He's one of my coaches too. And he's a captain, and he's just, I mean, he loves his career. So, he chose that over even finishing out his college playing days. So anyway, it's pretty cool to have those guys and be around them even more so, than, most guys you get to coach for those 3 or 4 years and they're gone, and you try to stay in touch, but having guys on the job was pretty cool.
Absolutely. I always try to, if you can, keep those relationships and keep in touch with guys, but it does get harder, and it is cool now. Obviously nothing compared to you, but getting to see guys that are now in coaching and teaching that I had the privilege of coaching is I think probably one of the most rewarding things you can have in the coaching profession. So Coach, we've asked this to, and everybody, there was one kind of constant answer on this, but in building your staff, what were the most important positions you felt like you had to fill? A lot of guys have said strength coach, but obviously you have such a great background there and have done such a good job. That probably wasn't a priority of yours necessarily. When you were building your staff, what was most important? Offensive line, defensive line, lower level coaches? Where did you go about doing that?
Um, I can see why guys would say strength coach, because there are guys that aren't weight room guys. And like my first job, the guy that hired me at Cortez was not a weight room guy. And that's why they weren't in there. That's why they weren't doing it. And but at the same time, that's why they weren't very good. So I can see why guys would say. Now, for me, that was never, like you said, that was never a priority, because I want to be that guy. I want to be the weight room guy. You know, I think position wise, for me, you know, O-line coach is a real important thing, because, you know, if those guys aren't getting it done, you're going to have a hard time moving the ball. And, you know, so O-line coach was always something, and somebody that I really valued. And I've been lucky to have some good ones over the years, and then have had a couple that have been with me a long time. And the other one for me, honestly, is defense coordinator. And I've always been an offensive guy, even though I've coached defensive positions at different times. But I think having a coordinator on the other side of the ball and I still, wherever I was, called the offense, even as a head coach, but the D coordinator to me was a huge position. And when I went to North Canyon, my first year, we all coached both sides of the ball, and I didn't have enough coaches at that time and I thought we were okay doing both sides of the ball, but then I realized, man, I'm asking a lot out of these guys, and maybe I'm not getting the best coach I could get at each position. So my second year there, I reached out to a guy and got a really good DC who was with me for 6 years there, David Ennis, who's the head coach of Northwest Christian now. He was my D coordinator at North Canyon for 6 years. So, and he did a great job for me. And I also had some other guys on the defense side, Tony Tabor, who's been around a long time, who's at Brophy now, coaches their D line. He was a head coach at Desert Mountain for a little bit. And Tony was with me, and Tony was awesome. So I think as much as you know, getting the position guys, I mean, you know, you want your O line, your DC, it's who you get to. You know, obviously it's who you get, because, you know, O line coach could be really important, but if you get the wrong guy, you know, and he's not teaching what you want him teaching, or he's teaching the wrong stuff or whatever, you know, then it doesn't matter how important that is. You got to get the right guys. And I've always also looked back on players that I've coached in the past to help coach, because they already know the system. They know what I'm looking for out of players, out of you know, different positions. And so my offensive line coach that I've had for the longest was a player that I coached at North Canyon. And he ended up going to Glendup Community, was an All-American, junior college. Then he went to Western New Mexico. He played there. But when he was done playing, he's been with me ever since, coaching the O-line. And he's been awesome. And I've had some other really good ones too. But the thing about him is we coached him, number one, so he knows how we want to do things. And he also is versed in the wing T, which I run, and he's also a spread guy. I mean, he could do both, and he could teach both to the linemen. So for me, that's really important. You know, a lot of guys, man, they might know the spread like crazy, but then you ask them to do some wing T stuff, and they're like, okay, well, how are you teaching that? What's the blocking scheme? What's a down block? You know, whatever. And so anyway, yeah. So, and then lower level, whoever, you know, guys that said lower level, freshman coach, is also, to me, your head freshman coach is huge, because that's when kids are experiencing football maybe for the first time, or at least your program for the first time. And you want those kids to love it, and you want them to stay in it. You want them coming back. And your head freshman coach can make or break it sometimes with those guys. And I've been really lucky too there that I've had a lower level guy almost my whole head coaching career who's been with me from the start. He was my head freshman coach in North Canyon, and he's been with me every other stop. And he's been around, and he gets it, and he gets kids. And so yeah, that head freshman coach is the lower level guys are huge too, for sure.
Coach Russo?
Coach, you mentioned the importance of having former players come back and help and be part of your staff and coach with you guys. How did you find people who were not former players to fit and meld with not only your current program, but people who had been with you for years and years? And how did you discern who would be a good fit for that?
A lot of it, if it wasn't one of my former players, which started out, all my coaches were former players when I first started. But like David Innes, I didn't know David from anybody really. I had heard his name, and I knew he was out there in the coaching world. But when I was just talking to other people about a D coordinator, he was actually coaching at Horizon at the time, and people said, "Hey, reach out to him. Reach out to Dave. He's good. I don't know if he's really happy at Horizon." He had come from Desert Vista, where he had been there with Rattay, and when Rattay was let go, Dave jumped over to anyway. So a lot of it was word of mouth, and then interviewing them, bringing them in and talking to them, and getting to know them a little bit, and finding out what they like to run, and what their philosophy was, what their defensive packages were. And the good thing for me with David was we played him my first year before I got him over with me. We played Horizon, so I saw what defense he was running. I got to experience going against it, and they were really good, and he did a great job. So for me, that was a little bit easier because I did get to see him do his thing live. But a lot of times it's just word of mouth, like Tony Tabor too. When he came over, I had heard of Tony. He was with Chaparral for a long, long time, and he was there with Estabrook and that group when they were really successful. Well, he was getting let go for some reason, and again, his name popped up, and they're like, "Hey, this guy," and so hey, I want good coaches, so I hit him up, and I didn't know Tony, at all as far as ever talking to him. He came over, we talked, he interviewed, and I liked him right off the bat, and he ended up being my D-line coach, and did special teams too. And honestly, we were only together for a year, but Tony will tell you, it was a year we won the state championship in 2005 at North Canyon, so that helps out. But Tony will tell you that's one of the most fun years he's ever had coaching. And it's important that your coaches get along. I mean, it really is. And so that's the other part about hiring guys and guys that you've coached, because you're probably going to get along with them pretty good. And but I've been lucky, like I said, Ennis, Tabor. I had Josh Seacock with me on my staff at one time. I've just been lucky to have really, really good assistant coaches over the years. And again, some that have been with me now for 15, 20 years almost. But it's a lot of it's hit and miss, because I will say too that I've had some that I wouldn't hire again. So it's not a perfect thing out there, but just do your research and hopefully you get the right guy.
Yeah, well, knowing been in Arizona so long, know all those names. Obviously, we've had some pretty dang good games the last 2 years with Coach Ennis at Northwest Christian. We were fortunate to win a barn burner this year, 42-41, and last year they put it on us pretty good in Prescott. So he's a fantastic football coach, does a great job. Very familiar with Tony Tabor. Actually, Coach Estabrook was on my staff one year when he retired up in Prescott, and he was on our staff one year in 2013. So know him really well as well. We've talked about this a little bit in building your system. And one of the things I always found fascinating, you've talked about it a little bit, is you've been able to successfully blend the wing tee with a lot of spread concepts. And that's not something that you hear a lot of guys talk about or have been able to do successfully. How did you go about putting in your system and blending those two schemes specifically? That has to take quite an expertise and ability to be able to do that, and you've done it so well. So give us some insight into that.
Well, I was a wing T guy for a long, long time, and I still am. But before the spread, really was taken off, there weren't a lot of guys running it. But so I was wing T when I came over to North Canyon. Jeff Bowen had been there before me, and Jeff Bowen is a big wing T guy, and so the one thing I didn't want to do is disrupt it too much and come in and put a crazy. I knew wing T; they had been running wing T, so all I did really that first couple of years was change terminology a little bit from what they were using to my own terminology for the wing T, and then past concepts out of the wing T. Over the years, I had done enough where besides running your boots, boot weak and boot strong and the wing T stuff, we could jump into some other stuff and throw some other routes out there and some other past concepts. But it wasn't until 2007, going into that season, that I went and took a clinic on the spread. And I knew I had an 8th grade quarterback that was coming in that was going to be a freshman. And he was awesome at throwing the ball. He could run. He was your spread guy that everybody's looking for nowadays that can run and throw. So I went and took this clinic for spread. And I took my receiver coach with me. It was over in California. It wasn't your normal clinic where you go in for 40 minutes to one session and you learn a little bit about this. It was a 2.5-day clinic where all you're learning is this spread offense. And it was put on by a guy named Tony Franklin. And Tony Franklin was one of the original guys in Kentucky when Hal Mumme and all them were there, putting in the original spread offense that everybody's running out. A lot of people call it air raid or whatever you want to call it now, but Tony Franklin was part of that staff. And that was Mike Leach, Hal Mumme, Tony Franklin. Anyway, Tony Franklin was teaching the clinic. So you went over there and spent 2.5 days with him. And at the time he was at the University of Troy, and he had the whole staff. I mean, they were there, his line coach, his receiver coach, and you learned the spread offense that they were running in that clinic. And you walked away with PowerPoint, different DVDs that were for each position to teach drills and stuff, wristband maker that, they went over everything. So I learned that spread offense and started putting it in that spring and, going into that season. And they even told you what to put in during spring ball. It was really detailed. And so that spread offense I've been running since about 2007. Putting the wing T and that together, we make them, they got to learn both. And some of them fit together and some of them don't. But, we could be total wing T one week and not run a lick of spread. And then the next week be all spread and you won't see wing T. And the beauty of the spread offense that we run with the wristbands and all that is it's simple to teach your players because your receivers and your running backs, and they look at their wristband and it tells them what they're doing. And, so you call in a play, red 5 or whatever, they look at their wristband and it'll say stock 1 or post or whatever that receiver is supposed to do. And it's super simple. So teaching that offense, and we run that stuff in 7s, in the summertime. And so they get enough reps at it to where, by the time the season starts, between camp and all that, they know both. And I expect them to know both offenses. Now, we've done a little wing T out of spread, where, we can run sweep and shotgun. We can run it out of spread and do some of those things and counter and things like that. But honestly, I think it puts defenses a little more pressure on teams we're facing on their defenses, knowing they have to prepare for wing T and spread both, and they're two different looks, man. And and you don't know what we're going to give you that week, so maybe both. We might give you both. So and I got some of this. I got to go way back to Jeremy Hathcock when he was at Desert Ridge. Jeremy was at took the same Tony Franklin spread clinic that I did, and so he was running that. But he's an old wing T guy too, from when he was at Blue Ridge and all that, playing up there. I saw him doing both one year. This was before I put the spread in, and I'm like, how's he running both? So he really was the one that I went to figure out, how are you doing wing T and spread? Because I know it would be hard for me to prepare for that. So we started doing it, and we've had some success with both. And I really think it has put a lot of pressure on the defensive guys to, have to figure out they got to stop both of them.
I think it's so difficult because even in the regions I've been in, very rare. Like, for instance, we're in the Grand Canyon, and there's some spread teams in there, but it's a lot of ground and pound stuff. So when you have kind of blending those styles together, I think it makes it really incredibly difficult on the defensive staff and trying to find answers for all those things. Coach Prusso, some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think that I don't know. Shoot, every time we've played a wing T team, that is the hardest offense by far to stop. So then having to prepare for something else on top of that, and not even knowing if you're going to see it, that just gives me a lot of anxiety thinking about it. So kudos to you guys. That sounds.
That's what we're hoping for is the defense coordinator. We're like, I hope he's going crazy this week. Trying to prepare. And we've had teams where I would talk to them after the game, and I could tell that they totally prepared for the wrong thing we ran. And so there's been times when they prepared 100% for wing T because they don't see it that much, and they knew that it was different and whatever. So they spent all week preparing for wing T, and we showed up and ran 100% spread and threw some new stuff into our spread, and so and destroyed them. And so, I'd say after the game, kind of like, so did you guys? Yeah, we thought you were going to be wing T. And so it does put a little bit. Now, you have to have, you got to go back and say, you have to have the players to be able to do it too. And, sometimes that's why we're more of a wing T team than we are a spread team, or vice versa, depending on personnel. And I'm a personnel guy, and I don't want to get stuck on one particular offense. Like, I'm not going to come in and say, oh, we're just going to be spread. We're running spread this year. Because we might not be a spread team, and I really believe if you don't have that quarterback, that guy that can do a lot of things, you might not be a spread team. But at the same time, if you don't have 2 or 3 really good running backs, you might not be a wing T team either. So, you can have one really good back, and if I might be more of a I team, or something than a wing T. For me, when we were our best at wing T, we've had at least 2 really talented running backs, and when we were our best, we had 3. And that way you can have the halfback, the fullback, and the wing back all touching the ball. And then if I have a quarterback that can throw and run, hey man, I'm a spread guy just like everybody else if I have that kid. But sometimes you don't, and you got to go with personnel, what it dictates for you. But I like having to be able to do both, and having that available for sure.
Well, one of my favorite questions, I always ask this to coaches, and gotten some very similar answers, but some different ones too. What does typical practice plan look like in terms of both when you're installing your system, and if you could walk us through a typical game week preparation? What do your practice plan look like? Periods, length, all those type of things.
So, first of all, I start with the coaches prep over the weekend, getting ready for that next game or that first game or whatever. But we'll say you're already in season, getting ready for the next game. I'm a huge film watcher. Obviously, that's the best way to prepare is to watch the other team's film, and I look at everything, and I expect my other coaches to do it too. I've gone from bringing the staff in all together to where now with huddle and everything else, hey, I would let my coaches go home and watch it, and as long as they're doing it, and I'll know if they are or they're not. But so us preparing, getting the game plan ready is number one, and then getting it to the players each week. Okay, and I'll talk the offense side of the ball, but it's the same. It's really the same for the defense, whoever my D coordinator is. Each week I put together a playbook and put it together for the guys, because whether it's wing T or spread or a combination of both, I want them to know exactly what we're running. I want them to know, these are the plays that we're going in this week with. The standard plays, the stuff we're doing. These are the new plays. These are the trick plays, and have the whole playbook for them. And it's not a huge playbook each week. It's, if we've been running sweep every week and we're in week 4, then unless something's totally different with that defense, I'm probably not drawing sweep up and giving it to them again, but something new. So they have a playbook each week. They'll get that playbook on Monday in weight class, so they can look it over and stuff before practice Monday. Usually we're going to have a team meeting or a offensive meeting. So I do offense and defense on different days. And there's been times when I did, both on the same day, but on Mondays, I'll just give you a week example. That way the day-to-day stuff will make more sense. Mondays would be offense. Tuesdays would be defense. Wednesdays is a combination. And then Thursday is the walkthrough. Like everybody else, Thursday walkthrough. So on Mondays, at the bigger schools, if you weren't an offensive player, you went with your defensive coaches and you worked on your defensive stuff. And but if you're an offensive guy, it was an offensive day for you. And Tuesdays were flipped. If you were a defensive guy, then you went with the defense and worked on all that. But if you say you were a quarterback and didn't play defense, you'd be overdoing your offensive stuff. So a Monday practice, an offensive meeting, half hour, whatever it is, to go over the stuff. Again, the playbook you handed out. I would expect the kids to at least have looked at it. You know how that goes. Some do, some don't. But go over the new stuff, get it on the board, show it to them, get out on the field. Sometimes we'd go out there. We do a thing called pat and go a lot, where it's receivers and quarterbacks, and it's just a simple warm-up thing for them. I'd always include the routes that we were going to run that week to be part of pat and go. Stretch, get that done, and then go into either a walkthrough type period for the offense to walk through the new stuff kind of, or go right into Indy. And then individual coaches, your line coach, your receiver coach, they're teaching, going through maybe some drills first, and then teaching the stuff that their position guys need to know for that week, the game plan. Then we do, a 7-on-7 period with the line O&D doing one-on-ones. And then we'd come together for team. And then a lot of times we would finish with our NASCAR or hurry-up offense, going up and down the field. Practice in general, I honestly don't like going more than 2 hours and 15 minutes. And when I first started, I think practices were probably 3 hours. But, the more research I did, the more I kind of got good at things. I think 2 hours, after 2 hours, for the most part, you're not getting a whole heck of a lot out of them, So 2 hours and 15 minutes, counting stretch and everything, is usually the time. We practiced in the evening. Everywhere I've been, I practice in the evening. Just in the beginning of the season, too dang hot to get out there. I think you really don't get as much out of the kids if you're going at 3 o'clock. And I know some people like that, and they'll tell you they do get it done, and they do, but I've never been a fan of that. I just felt like you're draining those kids. So we were evening type practice. We'd start around 5:30, 6 o'clock. We'd go to 7:30, 8 o'clock, depending. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday were around the same amount of time for all three of those practices. The Wednesday day, because it wasn't offense and defense, a combo, we would do a goal line period right off the bat for the defense and the offense. We do goal line. Then we would do, I would do 10 offensive plays against the scout D, and then the defense would do 10. We'd give them 10 of their plays against the defense, and we would just rotate back and forth like that because, excuse me, we didn't want to have anybody standing around too long. So, and I got that. I stole that from Centennial. I went and watched a Wednesday practice one year when we got knocked out of the playoffs and they were still in. I called Richard up and said, "Hey, do you mind if I come by?" And I wanted to see what they were doing. And so we did, and that's how they were running their Wednesday practice. And I asked him, I said, "Is this always your Wednesday practice like this, going offense, defense, back and forth like that?" And he said, "Yeah, we do it that way again, we don't want guys standing around too long and doing the whole offensive practice for, 40 minutes, and now it's defense's turn." So I started doing it that way probably in around 2004, 5, and I've done it that way ever since. So not super long practices. We do lift in season twice a week, and we're lucky to have that class everywhere I've been, so we could lift during the class time, so it wasn't during practice time. But lifting twice a week, I think in season is a big deal too, to keep you guys strong. But practice wise, Friday night games, Saturday, I got to where I only brought him in for film to watch the Friday night game. Bring him in, watch film, go over a few things, but we did not practice on Saturday. If kids needed to get in the training room and get some treatment or whatever, we're there for that, but didn't do any Saturday practices. So that's kind of how the week was. Did I answer that for you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach. I really enjoyed that. That's one of my favorite questions to ask guys, and I love hearing the differing perspectives on things. Coach Brusso?
Yeah, how did you mentioned doing one day O, one day D. I always find it really fascinating, interesting, the creativity and just different styles in which people do that. How initially did you come to that idea or land on that, or did you pick that up from somebody along the way?
Yeah, so it really was when we went to that Centennial practice. We saw the Wednesday practice, and so when we were talking about that, Richard Taylor, he talked about their Monday, Tuesday, and their Monday was offense, their Tuesday was defense, and they did the combo on Wednesday. So I think that's about the time I really started doing that. Before that, I think it was pretty much we did both every day, and the beauty of getting to the bigger schools. I'm gonna excuse myself for a second here. Hang on one sec. Sorry, I haven't talked as much in a long time. The beauty of the bigger schools is like the last, I don't know, probably every year at O'Connor, we didn't have anybody really going both ways. And so even though offense was the emphasis on Monday, defense was getting a full practice in too. And so they would go over and start installing all their stuff on Monday because they had everybody. And there might have been a year where we had one or two guys that would just come over and take a couple reps at tight end or something, a special play here or there. But we were lucky to have 2 full units. But I think around 2005 is when we started doing the practices like that, and I really think it helps a lot. Now you have to have numbers, and if you have a bunch of 2-way players, I don't know that it's the best way to go. That's something every program has to decide. Although even at Phoenix Christian, I could tell you with 35 guys, we still did it that way, and I still think it for us it was the best way to go.
Interesting stuff, Coach. Love that. In looking and doing my homework here and studying this, one of the things I found so interesting, and I was just hoping to get some insight on if you saw your second year at North Canyon, you guys had been 4-6, and then the following year went 14-0 to win the state championship. You really don't typically see that kind of a turnaround. Sometimes you'll see a 4-6 team go to 7-4, maybe 8-4. We went to 10-2 this year from 4-6 in 2023. But such an amazing turnaround in a year. What do you think triggered that? And was there anything in particular, or what was the story there?
Well, number one, think to win a lot of games and to win a championship in general, number one, I think you have to have a lot of talent. And, you know, as much as coaches get praise for winning the championship and blame for not doing so great, I mean, talent plays a big part in it, with your players. And I can tell you this, I've coached the same with that 4-6 team as I did with that 14-0 team the next year. I didn't change anything. And, we didn't change in the weight room. We didn't change. What changed is, honestly, we stayed healthy. And we had talent the year before when we went 4-6. It's funny you brought that up because Joe Kirstein was coaching at Glendale Community at the time, and he always recruited North Canyon, and we had some good conversations. His dad was my high school coach, and his brother was my quarterback when I was in high school. So I've known Joe a long time, and anyway, he came in after that 4-6 year and came in to see what kids we had and stuff, and one of the questions he asked me, he said, "How are you going to be next year?" And I said, "Joe, if we're not playing in the state championship next year, I'm going to be disappointed." And he looked at me and he goes, "For real?" Because, we were just 4-6. And I said, "Yeah, for real." I said, "I will be disappointed," because I knew what we had. I knew we had the talent. That year we went 4-6. We had so many injuries. And if you look at our losses, most of them were close. It was, we could have very easily been 8-2 that year instead of 4-6. So again, I want to say, I'd like to say, yeah, we saw what happened and we reevaluated and we did this and this and we righted the ship. But honestly, it was the kids worked really hard in the off season. We stayed healthy and had some luck during the season, had some good things happen, and we definitely played up to our potential.
Let me, if I could piggyback on that one. I've talked to our staff and I talked to our kids about this repeatedly. So many seasons in high school football to me are determined by one-score games. For us in 2023, we were 0-3 in one-score games, and we win those. That 4-6 team becomes a region champion team. And this year, we were fortunate. We were 3-0 in one-score games and ended up being 10-2 and much different season, obviously. You have any tricks of the trade or different things you work on situations? How do you go about winning those close games? Because I would love to tell you, I just finished my 25th year and say I have an answer to help us in those close ball games, but man, they make such a difference. And do you have any words of wisdom on that?
Well, I would say that, you said you went 0-3 one year with them and you went 3-0, the next year with those close games. And I would say that I'm probably 500 in games like that too. So I don't know that I do have any great insight on those. I think a lot of times, man, sometimes, and the old saying, "I'd rather be lucky than good." Sometimes that's true, and sometimes luck, and people say, "Well, you make your own luck," and you do, and all that. But there's things sometimes that happens in games that it's really out of your control as a coach, and like I've been in games when we're driving down for the winning score, and we have a kid do a knucklehead thing and get a 15-yarder, after the play's over. And instead of being on the 15-yard line now, we're back on the 30, and so taking away, there's certain things, that you can take out of games, you can try to take out of games, but man, when you're dealing with 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, sometimes things happen out there. And as well as I do, sometimes the parents will be like, "Well, why'd they do that?" Well, we didn't teach them to fumble. And you know what I'm saying? And we work on ball screen all the time. That's one of the biggest things we work on. And kids still fumble, and guys in the NFL still fumble. So sometimes there's things that happen in games that just change the game. And those one-score games, man. I mean, you could go back and probably look at the film, and there's probably 2 or 3 plays in that game that made that a one-score game, and really where if you execute like you should have, or you don't fumble that ball, or you don't have that 15-yard penalty, it might not have been a one-score game. You might have been up by 2 or 3 scores. So I don't know if there's, a factor to winning those games. Kids that are tough, kids that are gritty, kids that are, I can tell you this: the team I had in 2005 at North Canyon, the best thing about those kids was, besides the talent they had, was they refused to lose. They went into that season wanting to win a championship, and every day they talked about it, and every game they talked about it, and every practice they talked about it. And if you weren't practicing hard, there were 2 or 3 kids on that team that would make sure you were, because they'd knock your head off if you weren't. And so I think a lot of times the gritty, the toughness part of players comes into, winning those close games, because they just know how to get it done. So I don't know that there's a magic formula, but again, so many things can happen in the game that, can make it go one way or another.
Coach Brusso, some thoughts on that?
I'm glad you asked that question, Coach Collette, because I think you've gone back all the way to the 80s looking back at PHS one-score games and seeing the correlation there to the playoff performance and the record. So I don't know, all that marginal stuff really makes or breaks, the larger outcome. And shout outs to Joe Kersing, our first guest that we had on a few weeks ago. So kind of a funny small world that you guys are all connected, but very cool. He's a great coach.
Oh, he's awesome. And hang on a second. Sorry, my wife was stepping out, so I had to tell her I love her.
Good man.
Yeah, you guys know how it is. But Joe, I asked Joe to coach me my first year at O'Connor, and he's been a guy that's been a national champion, more than one time, and a great coach. And I had him do special teams for me my first year, and I think special teams are a huge part of the game. So it wasn't like I wasn't asking him to do something important, but man, he took that role on and was like a professional from the start. And whether I gave him 15 minutes or 20 minutes of practice or whatever, he came prepared. He came best special team coach I've ever had by a mile. And he's the real deal. And I like Joe a lot.
Coach, moving on, we've got a couple quick points. I've enjoyed the heck out of this, learning from you, but how do you go about teaching character and your leadership education and putting that in kids? And obviously, you've had a huge impact on so many guys. Do you have a system on that, or how do you go about doing that? Is it just the relationship factor? But how do you teach character and develop leadership in your players?
Well, I think a lot of it is building those relationships, and I think that's so important, because if you're going to ask kids to do certain things, then I think they'll be more willing to do it for you if they know you truly care about them, and if you have that relationship. It's just like your own kids. They know you care about them, they know you love them. If you're asking them to do something that's important, hopefully they're going to do it because they know that you're in it for them. And I think that's the same thing with the football guys. I've never been like, I've never come in with a set of 20, 30 rules that you got to follow, and I've always been similar to like how ASU and I don't know if you've heard Dillingham talk about what their kind of thing is. It's I think you have 3 things on there, and one is be a good person, make good choices, be a good person, do that, whatever. And then the very last
third one is have more fun, working harder than any team in the country.
Yeah, that's it. And I've always been kind of that way too with my guys. It's like, hey, make good decisions, make good choices. And we would go over, what good decisions and choices are, and even as as little as, being on time. That's an important thing. And, because I think football, and all coaches know this, that you're teaching more than just football. You're teaching life skills. And, if that kid's going to get a job, being on time is important. Showing up is important. Working with your teammates is important. So, there's a lot of things that the character part, and then honestly for me, I've always been about with my assistant coaches too. As coaches, we need to be examples to kids, and if we're going to ask them to do certain things, then we need to be that way. And if I'm telling the kids to be on time, then I better be on time, and my assistant coaches better be on time. And and that's where, me being in the weight room, I just feel like if I'm asking them to show up every day and work out and work hard in the weight room, I'm going to be there. So I think being an example too, leading by example, is something that on the fire department, was one of the big things. If you were going to be a captain on the job, you had to lead by example. If you wanted your crew to be a certain way, you had to be that way. So I think it's the same thing with the coach. You want your players to act a certain way, then you need to be that guy. And but the relationship part, I think, is huge, because it goes a long ways if you like the players and they like you, and that mutual respect and all that. That's a big deal.
Coach Prusso, some thoughts on that?
I just think that's fantastic, and I couldn't have put any of that better myself. And I just really appreciate how everything at the core of you is about the kid and making their experience better, and speaking true to who they are as people, and not just as players. And I know for me that's why I even got into coaching, and that we could thank Coach Collette for that. But he would talk about when I played for him how we'll find out who the best teams are in 10 years and the kind of men they become. And obviously growing up in Prescott, your winning state, at least back in my day, wasn't like a realistic dream. So it was, we had other goals, and that wasn't a bad thing, but it taught me more than just to focus on success and develop as a person. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think it's great that you guys emphasize that so much.
Yeah, and I winning championships has been, it's cool, and I think it's really great for the kids, because most people can't say that. Most people that go through their high school career playing haven't won a championship, and so to win those championships has been awesome. And but I think we never go into a season with that being the only goal, for the kids. And sorry, my dogs are getting crazy. So
mine was too a second ago.
But so the really, it's about I've had, again, teams where we were 4-6 or 3-7. They've been some of my favorite teams, and some of the guys, off those teams have been my favorite guys to coach. And so you always, you're going to remember those championship teams because you won a championship. But man, there's some really good things that happen in a crazy way when you're 3-7. And so I never really want to go, hey, we got to win the championship. We got to win the championship, because sometimes, it's not reality. And then, you can have a great experience even though you didn't win a championship, for sure. But hey, real quick, going back to the whole building a program thing, and we've talked about a lot, but one of the other things that I want to stress, to go back to, is you got to recruit your own kids. And it's a little bit different in Prescott because you know who you have for the most part, in the valley there coming up and stuff. But whenever I get to a new school, I am walking those hallways. I'm going to the lunchroom, and I'm finding kids that didn't play football. And my very first year at North Canyon, the knock on the prior coach was, he was tough. He was tough on guys. He ran a lot of guys off. That they didn't come out and play after their freshman and sophomore year. And so I made sure that any kid on that campus that should be playing football was playing football. And before spring ball that year, I had the 40, 50 kids that I knew were coming back out, that I knew were going to be part of the program. I told them they all had to bring out a kid from the school to spring ball, to the first spring ball practice. And I said, I said, I don't care if they end up playing or not, but you all got to bring somebody. And out of that group, that spring ball, we found 3 starters that started on that team the next year. And some pretty, I mean, they were pretty good players for us. So had I not had those kids do that, I don't know if those guys would have shown up or not. So recruiting your own hallways, recruiting your own school, getting into the middle schools, the junior highs over there early and finding out, who's who. Down here in the valley, so those kids could leave and go somewhere else. And so I made sure that they knew, hey, you need to be coming here. This is where you're supposed to come. I didn't want to lose them. Kids that were supposed to come to our school, you got to retain those kids to build that program. So getting numbers out too, getting better numbers than what was there before has always been a big thing for me too.
I absolutely love that. Making them bring somebody to spring ball. That might be something we're going to implement this year. But Coach, cannot thank you enough for joining us. I learned a ton here. And remember, all you folks out there listening, please like and subscribe. And we'll get more good content out to you. The Blue and Gold Gridiron Show. This has been a wonderful hour plus for me. I've learned a ton, and I'm just really grateful. Coach Prusso, some final thoughts for us.
Yeah, Coach, just really appreciate you being on and appreciate your time. And like Coach Collette said, doing this is so fun because it's just an hour of just pure learning and listening. And I just try to grow every year as a coach, and what a better way to do that than listen to people more successful and smarter than I. So really appreciate you coming on, and wish you well this spring season.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And I don't think I'm any smarter than anybody else, and I've been really, really lucky to have great assistant coaches wherever I've been, and I've been really lucky to have a lot of talented players over the years, and so I've been blessed with all that, and so it's not just about me. And I can honestly say whenever I've been part of a championship team, it was a total group effort, and players, coaches, administration, everything has to come together to win those championships. So thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been good talking to you guys.
Well, thanks a lot. We'll see everybody next week.